The city of Boston, Massachusetts, was known for its history, brick streets winding past old buildings, a harbor that glittered with ships, and neighborhoods where the past seemed to whisper through every cobblestone. For Claire Matthews, however, Boston wasn't just a city of history. It was a place where shadows lingered. At 29, Claire worked as a nurse at Massachusetts General Hospital. Her life was devoted to caring for others, but her own heart carried scars. Just 2 years earlier, her fiancé had died in a tragic accident. Since then, Claire had buried herself in long shifts and sleepless nights, hoping work would numb the ache inside her. But grief doesn't leave quietly. It lingers like a shadow. One late evening, after finishing a 12-hour shift, Claire walked out of the hospital into the crisp November air. She pulled her coat tighter and hurried toward the subway. As she passed a street musician playing the violin, something about the melody stopped her. The notes were soft, haunting, and somehow healing. She glanced at the musician and froze. His face was familiar. "Daniel?" she whispered. The man looked up, startled. His eyes widened. "Claire?" Daniel Carter had been her classmate in college. Back then, he had studied music while she pursued nursing. They had been friends, close friends, until life pulled them in different directions. She hadn't seen him in nearly a decade. "What are you doing here?" Claire asked, her voice a mix of surprise and warmth. Daniel smiled faintly. "Playing, I guess. Music's still what keeps me alive." They talked for a few minutes, catching up. Claire learned that Daniel had recently returned to Boston after years of traveling as a performer, but life hadn't been easy for him either. A serious car accident had injured his hand, leaving him unable to play at the same level he once did. "Music was everything to me," Daniel admitted, "and when I lost it, I felt like I lost myself." Claire's heart ached. His pain mirrored her own. Different storms, same shadows. Over the next few weeks, Claire and Daniel met often, sometimes at the cafe near the harbor, sometimes walking along the Charles River, sometimes simply sitting in silence. For the first time in years, Claire felt understood. Daniel never rushed her to move on. Instead, he listened. He shared his own struggles, how it felt to face a future so different from the one he'd imagined. "You know what I've learned," Daniel said one snowy evening as they walked under twinkling holiday lights. "Shadows only exist because there's light somewhere. You just have to look for it." Those words stuck with Claire. Slowly, little pieces of light began to slip through Claire's shadows. She started drawing again, a hobby she had abandoned after her fiancé's death. She sketched sunsets, city skylines, and faces of patients who had touched her heart. Daniel, despite his injury, began composing music again. He couldn't play perfectly, but he discovered beauty in imperfection. One day, Daniel handed Claire a sheet of music. "This is for you," he said shyly. "It's not perfect, but neither are we, and maybe that's okay." Claire listened to him play, the notes raw and tender. Tears filled her eyes, not from sadness, but from something she hadn't felt in years, hope. But shadows don't disappear overnight. One night, after a particularly difficult shift at the hospital, Claire broke down. A young patient hadn't survived, and the weight of loss pressed heavily on her chest. She called Daniel, but when he answered, she couldn't speak. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered. "I'm so tired of losing people." Daniel's voice was steady. "Then let me carry the weight with you. You don't have to face the shadows alone." Still, fear gnawed at her. Loving again meant risking loss again, and she wasn't sure she was strong enough. Spring came, and with it, a turning point. Daniel invited Claire to a small community concert. His hand still shook when he played, but his music filled the room with hope. As Claire watched him, she realized something. Life would always hold shadows, but shadows couldn't erase the light. Her fiancé's memory would always be part of her, but that didn't mean her story had to end in grief. After the concert, Daniel found her waiting by the door. So, he asked nervously, was it too awful? Claire shook her head, tears in her eyes. It was beautiful. You're beautiful. Daniel's breath caught, and in that moment, under the soft glow of street lamps, Claire chose to step beyond the shadows. She kissed him gently, not as someone trying to replace the past, but as someone choosing a new future. A year later, Claire stood in the same concert hall, this time with her own art displayed on the walls. Her sketches had been turned into a series called The Light Beyond the Shadows, paired with Daniel's music. Together, their work told a story of loss, healing, and hope. As the final song played, Claire looked around at the crowd, then